Energy Management System Requirements with Guidance for Use. Reference number ISO 50001-2018. Hi friends, I welcome you all here at TNV Academy. In this session, we are going to talk about an international standard ISO 50001-2018 Energy Management Systems. In this session, we shall cover all the requirements of ISO 50001-2018 Energy Management System in detail. Let's discuss about the outcome of this session. After completing this session, you will be enabled to understand all the requirements of ISO 50001-2018 Energy Management Systems necessary to support the operations of the standard. Before discussing the standard, let me give you a brief idea about International Organization for Standardization or ISO in short. ISO is a worldwide federation of national standard bodies. The work of preparing international standard is normally carried out through ISO technical committees. Each member body interested in a subject for whom a technical committee has been established has the right to be represented on that committee. International organizations, governmental and non-governmental, in liaison with ISO, also take part in the work. ISO collaborates closely with the International Electrotechnical Commission (IEC) on all matters of electrotechnical standardization. Now, coming to this standard. This standard document was prepared by Technical Committee ISO TC 301 Energy Management and Energy Savings. This second edition cancels and replaces the first edition ISO 50001-2011, which has been technically revised. The main changes compared to the previous edition are as follows. Adoption of ISO requirements for management system standards, including a high-level structure, identical core text, and common terms and definitions to ensure a high level of compatibility with other management system standards. Better integration with strategic management processes. Clarification of language and document structure. Stronger emphasis on the role of top management. Adoption of context order for the terms and their definitions in clause 3 and update of some definitions. Inclusion of new definitions, including energy performance improvement. Clarification on exclusions of energy types. Clarification of energy review. Introduction of the concept of normalization of energy performance indicators and associated energy baselines. Addition of details on the energy data collection plan and related requirements. Previously, energy measurement plan. Clarification of text related to energy performance indicators and energy baselines in order to provide a better understanding of these concepts. Let's have a short introduction of Energy Management Systems Standard. According to the standard, the aim of this standard is to enable organizations to establish the systems and procedures necessary to continually improve energy performance, including energy efficiency, energy use, and energy consumption. This standard specifies the energy management system requirements for an organization. Successful implementation of an energy management system supports a culture of energy performance improvement that depends upon commitment from all levels of the organization, especially top management. In many instances, this involves cultural changes within an organization. This standard applies to the activities under the control of the organization. Its application can be tailored to fit the specific requirement of the organization, including the complexity of its systems, degree of documented information, and available resources. Development and implementation of an energy management system includes an energy policy, objectives, energy targets, and action plans related to its energy efficiency, energy use, and energy consumption while meeting applicable legal requirements and other requirements. An energy management system enables an organization to set and achieve objectives and energy targets, to take actions as needed to improve its energy performance, and to demonstrate the conformity of its system to the requirements of this document. Coming to the energy performance approach as described by ISO under this standard. This standard provides requirements for a systematic, data driven, and facts based process focused on continually improving energy performance. Energy performance is a key element integrated with the concepts introduced in this document in order to ensure effective and measurable results over time. Energy performance is a concept which is related to energy efficiency, energy use, and energy consumption. Energy performance indicators and energy baselines are two interrelated elements addressed in this document to enable organizations to demonstrate energy performance improvement. Let's discuss about Plan, Do, Check, Act (PDCA) cycle. The energy management system described in this standard is based on the Plan, Do, Check, Act (PDCA) Continual Improvement Framework and incorporates energy management into existing organizational practices. You can see here on the screen the graphical representation of PDCA cycle. Let me explain the PDCA cycle to you. According to Wikipedia, PDCA is an iterative design and management method used in business for the control and continuous improvement of processes and products. The PDCA cycle is basically a continuous loop of planning, doing, checking, and acting. It provides a simple and effective approach for solving problems and managing change. The model is useful for testing improvement measures on a small scale before updating procedures and working practices. Let me explain PDC and A components individually. Let's start with P, Plan. According to the standard, plan includes understanding the context of the organization, establishing an energy policy and an energy management team, considering actions to address risks and opportunities, and conducting an energy review. Planning also comprises identifying significant energy uses, establishing energy performance indicators, energy baselines, objectives, and energy targets. According to the standard document, planning also include making action plans necessary to deliver results that would improve energy performance in accordance with the organization's energy policy. Coming to the second alphabet, D. Standard defines do as implementing the action plans, operational and maintenance controls, and communication. Do also ensure competence and considering energy performance in design and procurement. Let's understand now the third alphabet, C, which stands for check. The ISO 50001-2018 standard defines check as monitoring, measuring, analyzing, evaluating, auditing, and conducting management review of energy performance and the energy management systems. Coming to the last alphabet, A, which stands for ACT of PDCA cycle. Standard defines ACT as taking actions to address non-conformities and continually improve energy performance and the energy management systems. I hope that you have understood now the Pdca cycle in context with the ISO 50001-2018 Energy Management Systems. Coming to the compatibility part now, I am going to explain compatibility of ISO 50001-2018. This standard document conforms to ISO's requirements for management system standards, including a high-level structure, identical core text, and common terms and definitions, thereby ensuring a high level of compatibility with other management system standards. This standard can be used independently. However, an organization can choose to combine its energy management system with other management systems or integrate its energy management system in the achievement of other business, environmental, or social objectives. Just an example: two organizations carrying out similar operations but having different energy performance can both conform to the requirements of ISO 50001. Let's talk about benefits of energy management system. According to the standard, effective implementation of energy management system provides a systematic approach to improvement of energy performance that can transform the way organizations manage energy. By integrating energy management into business practice, organizations can establish a process for continual improvement of energy performance. By improving energy performance and associated energy costs, organization organization can be more competitive. A standard specifies that implementation of energy management system can lead organizations to meet overall climate change mitigation goals by reducing their energy related greenhouse gas emissions. Friends, this was fundamental information about the standard. Now, let me start with the requirements of ISO 50001-2018 Energy Management Systems. We shall cover the 10 sections of the standard in this session, which are Clause 1 Scope, Clause 2 Normative References, Clause 3 Terms and Definitions, Clause 4 Context of the organization, Clause 5 Leadership, Clause 6 Planning, Clause 7 Support, Clause 8 Operation, Clause 9 Performance Evaluation, and Clause 10 Improvement. And also, let's start with the scope. The scope of ISO 50001-2018 specifies requirements for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and improving an energy management system. The intended outcome is to enable an organization to follow a systematic approach in achieving continual improvement of energy performance and the energy management system. Scope states that the standard is applicable to any organization, regardless of its type, size, complexity, geographical location, organizational culture, or the products and services it provides. The standard is applicable to activities affecting energy performance that are managed and controlled by the organization and is also applicable irrespective of the quantity, use, or types of energy consumed. According to the standard, organization requires demonstration of continual energy performance improvement but does not define levels of energy performance improvement to be achieved. Scope of ISO 50001-2018 says that the standard can be used independently or can be aligned or integrated with other management systems. At the end of the scope in standard, it is stated that guidance to use the standard can be found in Annexure A of the standard. The Annexure B of Standard ISO 50001-2018 provides a comparison of current 2018 edition with the previous edition, which was ISO 50001-2011. So friends, This was the scope of ISO 50001-2018. And now, I am coming to the normative references under ISO 50001-2018. As per ISO 50001-2018, it is specified in a standard that there are no normative references in the document. Let's come to the third section of the standard, which is terms and definitions. Before explaining the terms and definitions applicable for the purposes of this standard, let me tell you that ISO and IEC maintain terminological databases for use in standardization, the URLs of which can be seen here on the screen. You are recommended to visit these websites for more information about the terms and definitions used in various standards. Let me start with the terms related to the organization. First term, organization. Organization is a person or group of people that has its own functions with responsibilities, authorities, and relationship to achieve its objectives. The concept of organization includes, but is not limited to, sole trader, company, corporation, firm, enterprise, authority, partnership, charity, or institution, or part or combination thereof, whether incorporated or not, public or private. Top management is a person or group of people who directs and controls an organization at the highest level. Top management is empowered to delegate authority and provide resources within the organization. If the scope of the management system covers only part of an organization, then top management refers to those who direct and control that part of the organization. In relation with energy management system, top management controls the organization as defined within energy management system, scope and boundaries of the energy management system. Next term is boundary. Boundary means here the physical or organizational limits. For example, a process, a group of processes, a site, multiple sites under the control of an organization, or an entire organization. In context with energy management system, the organization defines the boundaries of its energy management system. Next term is energy management system scope. It is a set of activities which an organization addresses through an energy management system. Here is a note for you. The energy management system scope can include several boundaries and can include transport operations. Next term is interested parties, which is preferred term, or the admitted term is stakeholder. Interested party or stakeholder is a person or organization that can affect, be affected by, or perceive itself to be affected by a decision or activity. Let me define the terms related to management system now. First term is management system. Management system is set of interrelated or interacting elements of an organization to establish policies and objectives and processes to achieve those objectives. A management system can address a single discipline or several disciplines. The system elements include the organization's structure, roles and responsibilities, planning and operation. Energy management system. Next term is energy management system. Energy management system is a management system to establish an energy policy, objectives, energy targets, action plans, and processes to achieve the objectives and energy targets. Next term is policy. Policy is intentions and direction of an organization as formally expressed by its top management. Next term is energy policy. It is a statement by the organization of its overall intention or intentions direction or directions, and commitments related to its energy performance as formally expressed by the top management. Next term is energy management team. Next term is energy management team. Energy management team is a team of person or persons with responsibility and authority for effective implementation of an energy management system and for delivering energy performance improvement. The size and nature of an organization and available resources are taken into account when determining the size of an energy management team. A single person can perform the role of the team. Let's talk about terms related to requirement. First term is requirement. Requirement is a need or expectation that is stated, generally implied, or obligatory. Generally implied means that it is custom or common practice for the organization and interested parties that the need or expectation under consideration is implied. A specified requirement is one that is stated, for example, in documented information. Second term is conformity. Conformity is the fulfillment of a requirement. Next is non-conformity. Non-conformity is non-fulfillment of a requirement. Next term is corrective action. Corrective action is an action to eliminate the cause of a non-conformity and to prevent recurrence. Next is documented information. Documented information is an information required to be controlled and maintained by an organization and the medium on which it is contained. Documented information can be in any format and media and from any source. Next is process. Process is a set of interrelated or interacting activities which transform inputs into outputs. For example, energy using processes such as combustion. Next term is monitoring. Monitoring is basically determining the status of a system, a process, or an activity. For example, in an energy management system, monitoring can be review of energy data. Next is audit. Audit is a systematic, independent, and documented process for obtaining audit evidence and evaluating it objectively to determine the extent to which the audit criteria are fulfilled. An audit can be an internal audit, which is first party, or an external audit, which is second party or third party, and it can be a combined audit, which can be combining two or more disciplines. An internal audit is conducted by the organization itself or by an external party on its behalf. The term audit, as defined here and as used in this standard, means the internal audit of an energy management system. Next term is outsource, which is a verb. Outsource is to make an arrangement where an external organization performs part of an organization's function or process. Now, coming to the terms related to performance. First term is measurement. Measurement is a process to determine a value. Next is performance. Performance is a measurable result. It can relate either to quantitative or qualitative findings. Performance can relate to the management of activities, processes, products, including services, systems, or organizations. Next is energy performance. Energy performance is a measurable results related to energy efficiency, energy use, and energy consumption. Energy performance can be measured against the organization's objectives, energy targets, and other energy performance requirements. Next term is energy performance indicator. Energy performance indicator is a measure or unit of energy performance. As defined by the organization, energy performance indicators can be expressed by using a simple metric, ratio, or a model, depending on the nature of the activities being measured. Next term is energy performance indicator value. It is a quantification of the energy performance indicator at a point in or over a specified period of time. Next term is energy performance improvement. It is an improvement in measurable results of energy efficiency or energy consumption related to energy use compared to the energy baseline. Next term is energy baseline. It is a quantitative reference providing a basis for comparison of energy performance. You are suggested to refer ISO 50015 for additional information on measurement and verification of energy performance, and also refer to ISO 50006 for additional information on energy performance improvement and energy baseline. Next term is static factor. A static factor is an identified factor that significantly impacts energy performance and does not routinely change. Significance criteria are determined by the organization. For example, facility size, design of installed equipment, number of weekly shifts, range of products. Next is relevant variable. Relevant variable is a quantifiable factor that significantly impacts energy performance and routinely changes. For example, weather conditions, operating conditions, indoor temperature, light level, working hours, production output. Next is normalization. Normalization means modification of data to account for changes to enable comparison of energy performance under equivalent condition. Next term is risk. Risk is basically an effect of uncertainty, whereas an effect is a deviation from the expected, which can be positive or negative. Risk is often expressed in terms of a combination of the consequences of an event, including changes in circumstances and the associated likelihood of occurrence. Next is competence. Competence is an ability to apply knowledge and skills to achieve intended results. Next term is objective. Objective is the result to be achieved. An objective can be strategic, tactical, or operational. Objectives can relate to different disciplines such as financial, health and safety, and environmental goals, and can apply at different levels such as strategic, organization wide, product and process. An objective can be expressed in other ways. For example, as an intended outcome, a purpose, an operational criteria, as an energy objective, or by the use of other words with similar meaning. For example, aim, goal. In the context of energy management systems, objectives are set by the organization, consistent with the energy policy to achieve specific results. Next term is effectiveness. Effectiveness is an extent to which planned activities are realized and planned results achieved. Next term is energy target. Energy target is quantifiable objective of energy performance improvement. Next term is continual improvement. Continual improvement is recurring activity to enhance performance. The concept relates to the improvement of energy performance and the energy management system. Let me define some terms related to energy. First term is energy. Energy is like electricity, fuels, steam, heat, compressed air, and other similar media. Here is a note. For the purposes of this document, energy refers to the various types of energy, including renewable, which can be purchased, stored, treated, used in an equipment or in a process or recovered. Next term is energy consumption. Energy consumption is the quantity of energy applied. Next term is energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is a ratio or other quantitative relationship between an output of performance, service, goods, commodities, or energy and an input of energy. Next term is energy use. Energy use is basically application of energy. For example, ventilation, lighting, heating, cooling, transportation, data storage, production, process. Next term is energy review. Energy review is an analysis of energy efficiency, energy use, and energy consumption based on data and other information, leading to identification of significant energy use and opportunities for energy performance improvement. Next is significant energy use. Significant energy use is energy use accounting for sustainable energy consumption and or offering considerable potential for energy performance improvement. Significant energy use can be facilities, systems, processes, or equipment. Friends, it was about the clause 3, terms and definitions of ISO 50001 2018. Now we shall start discussing clause 4, context of the organization. The clause 4 establishes the context of energy management system and underpins the rest of a standard. Organization will need to identify external and internal issues and the needs and expectations of its stakeholders and interested parties, as well as how value is delivered to them. This clause also partially addresses the concept of the creation of value. Here, the term issue covers not only problems or potential problems, but also important topics for the system to address, such as changing conditions, legal requirements, and other obligations. The clause 4 of ISO 50001 2018 also includes determining the scope of the energy management system. The scope is intended to clarify the boundaries that apply the energy management system. Additionally, Clause 4 requires organization to establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve the management system in accordance with the requirements of the standard. Clause 4 of ISO 50001 2018 has four subclauses, which are Subclause 4.1, Understanding the organization and its context. Subclause 4.2, Understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties. Subclause 4.3, Determining the scope of the energy management system. And Subclause 4.4, Energy management system. Let's start with Subclause 4.1, Understanding the organization and its context. The subclause 4.1 of ISO 50001 2018 states that the organization must determine external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose and that can affect its ability to achieve the intended outcome or outcomes of its energy management system and improve its energy performance. Let us talk here about the external and internal context. The requirement of clause 4.1 can seem excessively general, and there is a threat of going too wide when defining the internal and external issues. In fulfilling this clause, organizations should emphasize only on issues that can affect the consumer satisfaction and delivery of quality product or service. An organization's internal context is the environment in which it targets to achieve its objectives. Internal context can include its approach to governance, its contractual relationships with customers, and its interested parties. Things that need to be considered are related to the culture, philosophies, ethics, or ideologies inside the organization. as well as complexity of processes and organizational structure. To determine external context, organizations should consider issues arising from its social, technological, environmental, ethical, political, legal, and economic environment. Some examples of external context may include government regulations, changes in the law, economic shifts in market, the organization's competition, changes in technology, etc. We should include some of the internal context as well, but are not limited to. Some of the examples of internal issues are the structure of the organization, which has limited flexibility when dealing with varying demands, availability of reliable, qualified, and competent workforce, which is very positive, stability of workforce, where wage benchmarking is not consistent with competitors, staff retention, which is also very high, contractual arrangements with customer, which is beneficial to the organization, payment terms from customers provides high credit, solvency of customers, and expansion of customer base also play an important role. The culture within the organization is equally important internal factor. Coming to subclause 4.2, understanding the needs and expectations of interested parties. The subclause 4.2 of the standard states that the organization must determine the interested parties that is relevant to energy performance and the energy management system. Organization must determine the relevant requirements of these interested parties and which of identified needs and expectations the organization addresses through its energy management system. Subclause 4.2 specifies that the organization must ensure that it has access to the applicable legal requirements and other requirements related to its energy efficiency, energy use, and energy consumption. Clause also states that organization must determine how these requirements apply to its energy efficiency, energy use, and energy consumption. According to the subclause 4.2 of ISO 50001-2018, organization must ensure that these requirements are taken into account. And clause also says that organization must review at defined intervals its legal requirements and other requirements. Let me explain the subclause 4.2 in simple words. The definition of interested parties is already explained under clause 3 of the standard. Some of the examples of interested parties are customers, employees, governments, investors, shareholders, suppliers, and vendors, etc. The clause 4.2 of ISO 50001-2018 states that the organization must determine relevant interested parties and relevant requirements of appropriate concerned parties. Relevant interested parties to be considered are those that could affect or potentially affect the organization's ability to constantly provide products and services that meet customer and applicable statutory and regulatory requirements. Monitor and review information related to interested parties and relevant requirements. Initially, the organization will need to define external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose. That is, what are the relevant issues, both inside and out, that have an influence on what the organization does, that would affect its capability to accomplish the intended outcomes of its management system. It should be noted that the term issue covers not only problems which would have been the subject of the precautionary action in previous standards, but also important topics for the management system to address, such as any market assurance and governance goals that the organization might set for its management system. Next, the organization has to determine relevant interested parties and relevant requirements of relevant interested parties. An interested party is a person or organization that can affect, be affected by, or recognize themselves to be affected by a decision or activity that's within the scope of the management system. There will be those external interested parties that enforce specific legal, regulatory, or contractual requirements in an organization. There may also be requirements specified by internal interested parties, for example, management and staff, which could be permanent and temporary. There is no requirement in this international standard for the organization to consider interested parties which have been determined by the organization not to be relevant to its energy management system. Similarly, there is no requirement to address a particular requirement of a relevant interested party if the organization considers that the requirement is not relevant. Determining what is relevant or not relevant is reliant on whether or not it has an impact on the organization's ability to regularly provide products and services that meet customer and applicable statutory and regulatory requirements, or the organization aim to improve consumer satisfaction. The organization can decide to determine supplementary needs and expectations that will assist it to meet its energy management objectives. However, it is at the organization's choice whether or not to accept additional requirements to satisfy interested parties beyond what is required by this international standard, ISO 50001 2018. At the end, Clause 4.2 stresses under a note to refer ISO 19600 for additional information on compliance management. Now, coming to Subclause 4.3, determining the scope of the energy management system. The Subclause 4.3 specifies that the organization must determine the boundaries and applicability of the energy management system to establish its scope. When determining the energy management system scope, the organization must consider the external and internal issues referred to in subclause 4.1 and the requirements referred to in subclause 4.2. This subclause also states that the organization must not exclude an energy type within the scope and boundaries. Finally, the subclause 4.3 emphasis on mandatory documentation requirements. The subclause 4.3 states that the energy management system scope and boundaries must be maintained as documented information by the organization. Let's talk about subclause 4.4, Energy Management System now. The subclause 4.4 of ISO 50001 2018 says that the organization must establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve an energy management system, including the processes needed, and their interactions, and continually improve energy performance in accordance with the requirements of this document. It is stated under this subclause as a note that the processes needed can differ from one organization to other due to the size of the organization and its type of activities, processes, products, and services. It could also differ due to the complexity of processes and their interactions, and also the competence of personnel. Friends, let's talk about Clause 5, Leadership of ISO 5001 2018 now. This Clause 5 leadership talks about the role of top management, which is the group of people who direct and control an organization at the highest level. They need to ensure that the energy management system and its requirements are integrated into the organization's processes and the policy and objectives are aligned with the strategic direction of the organization. They also need to make sure that the energy management policy is made available, communicated, maintained, and understood by all parties. The clause 5, leadership, is further divided into three subclauses, which are Subclause 5.1, leadership and commitment. Subclause 5.2, energy policy. Subclause 5.3, organizational roles, responsibilities, and authorities. Let me start with Subclause 5.1, leadership and commitment. This subclause 5.1 leadership and commitment states that the top management must demonstrate leadership and commitment with respect to continual improvement of its energy performance and the effectiveness of the energy management system by ensuring that the energy management system scope and boundaries are established. The clause specifies that the top management must demonstrate leadership and commitment with respect to continual improvement of its energy performance and the effectiveness of the energy management system by ensuring that the energy policy, objectives, and energy targets are established and are compatible with the strategic direction of the organization. According to Subclause 5.1, top management must show leadership and commitment for the effectiveness of the energy management system by ensuring the integration of the energy management system requirements into the organization's business processes. It is also mentioned under a note within this subclause that reference to business in this standard can be interpreted broadly to mean those activities that are core to the purposes of the organization's existence. As per this subclause, top management must show leadership and commitment with respect to continual improvement of its energy performance and the effectiveness of the energy management system by ensuring that action plans are approved and implemented. The subclause 5.1 of ISO 50001-2018 states that for continual improvement of its energy performance and the effectiveness of the energy management system, organization must establish the leadership and commitment by ensuring that the resources needed for the energy management system are available. As per clause 5.1, standard specifies that it is a requirement to show the leadership and commitment by top management by communicating the importance of effective energy management and of conforming to the energy management system requirements. Subclause 5.1 of ISO 50001-2018 also states that top management must establish leadership and commitment for the effectiveness of energy management system by ensuring that the energy management system achieves its intended outcomes. The standard ISO 50001-2018 energy management system through its subclause 5.1 says that top management must demonstrate leadership and commitment by promoting continual improvement of energy performance and the energy management system, and by ensuring the formation of an energy management team. For the effectiveness of the energy management system, it is recommended in subclause 5.1 that organization must express the leadership and commitment by directing and supporting persons to contribute to the effectiveness of the energy management system and to energy performance improvement. As per this subclause, top management must demonstrate the leadership and commitment by supporting other relevant management roles to demonstrate their leadership as it applies to their areas of responsibility. The subclause 5.1 also states that top management must establish the leadership and commitment with respect to continual improvement of its energy performance and the effectiveness of the energy management system by ensuring that the energy performance indicators appropriately represents energy performance. The subclause 5.1 leadership and commitment of ISO 50001-2018 specifies that the top management must demonstrate leadership and commitment with respect to the effectiveness of the energy management system by ensuring that the processes are established and implemented to identify and address changes affecting the energy management system and energy performance within the scope and boundary of the energy management system. Coming to the subclause 5.2, Energy Policy of ISO 50001-2018 Energy Management System now. The subclause 5.2 of ISO 50001-2018 states that the top management must establish an energy policy that is appropriate to the purpose of the organization and provides a framework for setting and reviewing objectives and energy targets. According to this subclause, the top management must ensure that the energy policy includes a commitment to ensure the availability of information and necessary resources to achieve objectives and energy targets. The subclause states that it is responsibility of top management while establishing the energy policy that the policy includes a commitment to satisfy applicable legal requirements and other requirements related to energy efficiency, energy use, and energy consumption. As per Clause 5.2, energy policy must include a commitment to continual improvement of energy performance and the energy management system, and also supports the procurement of energy efficient products and services that impact energy performance. Clause also states that energy policy must support design activities that consider energy performance improvement. As per clause, the energy policy must be available as documented information. It must be communicated within the organization and must be available to interested parties as appropriate. Lastly, Clause 5.2 of ISO 50001-2018 states that the top management must ensure that energy policy is periodically reviewed and updated as necessary. Friends, this was all about Clause 5.2 Energy Policy. Now, let me talk about Subclause 5.3 Organization Roles, Responsibilities, and Authorities. The subclause 5.3 says that the top management must ensure that the responsibilities and authorities for relevant roles are assigned and communicated within the organization. As per this clause, top management must assign the responsibility and authority to the energy management team for ensuring that the energy management system is established, implemented, maintained, and continually improved. Clause also states that top management must allocate the responsibility and authority to the energy management team for ensuring that the energy management system conforms to the requirements of this document. For implementing action plans to continually improve energy performance, it is a requirement of the standard that organizations' top management must allot the responsibility and authority to the energy management team. Subclause 5.3 of ISO 50001-2018 says that the top management must assign the roles, the responsibility and authority to energy management team for reporting on the performance of energy management system and improvement of energy performance to top management at determined intervals. Lastly, the standard through its subclause 5.3 specifies that top management must allocate the responsibility and authority to energy management team for establishing criteria and methods needed to ensure that the operation and control of the energy management system are effective. We have covered now the requirements of Clause 5 Leadership of ISO 50001-2018 Energy Management System. Let's talk about Clause 6 Planning of the Standard. Clause 6 Planning of ISO 50001-2016 emphasis on how an organization plans actions to address both the risks and opportunities identified in Clause 4 of the standard. It emphasizes on the development and use of a planning process rather than a procedure to address both a range of factors and the risk associated with such factors. It emphasizes on the development and use of a planning process rather than a procedure address both a range of factors and the risk associated with such factors. The requirements of this clause 6 also include determining the objectives of and energy targets for the energy management system and what is required from both a financial and human resource perspective to fulfill both. There is also a focus on the energy review, which evaluates which types of as well as how much energy is used by the organization and the determination of energy performance indicators, an energy baseline, and an energy data collection plan. The clause 6 has further 6 subclauses, and those are Subclause 6.1 Actions to address risks and opportunities. Subclause 6.2 Objectives, energy targets, and planning to achieve them. Subclause 6.3 Energy review. Subclause 6.4 Energy performance indicators. Subclause 6.5 Energy baseline. And subclause 6.6 Planning for collection of energy data. Let's start with subclause 6.1 Actions to address risks and opportunities. The subclause 6.1.1 states that when planning for the energy management system, the organization must consider the issues referred to in subclause 4.1 and the requirements referred to in subclause 4.2 of the standard. Organization must also consider the review of the organization activities and the processes that can affect energy performance. As per this subclause, planning must be consistent with the energy policy and must lead to actions that result in continual improvement in energy performance. Subclause 6.1.1 specifies that the organization must determine the risks and opportunities that need to be addressed to give assurance that the energy management system can achieve its intended outcome or outcomes, including energy performance improvement. Subclause also states that the organization must determine the risks and opportunities that need to be addressed to prevent or reduce undesired effects and to achieve continual improvement of the energy management system and energy performance. It is also recommended in this subclause 6.1.1 as a note to refer a concept diagram illustrating the energy planning process as shown in figure A.2. Coming to the subclause 6.1.2 now. Subclause 6.1.2 of the standard states that the organization must plan actions to address these risks and opportunities. Clause also specifies that organization must also plan actions to address how to integrate and implement the actions into its energy management system and energy performance processes, and also how to evaluate the effectiveness of these actions. Let's talk about subclause 6.2 Objectives, energy targets, and planning to achieve them. Standard through its subclause 6.2.1 states that the organization must establish objectives at relevant functions and levels. The organization must establish energy targets to meet the requirement of the ISO 50001-2018. The subclause 6.2.2 says that the objectives and energy targets must be consistent with the energy policy. The details about energy policy can be found under subclause 5.2 of the standard. As per clause 6.2.2, if practicable, the objectives and energy targets must be measurable and must take the applicable requirements into account. It must also consider significant energy use, the details of which are described in subclause 6.3 of this standard. The subclause 6.2.2 specifies that the objectives and energy targets must take opportunities to improve energy performance into account. It is recommended here to refer subclause 6.3 of this standard to get more information about opportunities. The clause also states that the objectives and energy targets must be monitored, communicated, and updated as appropriate. Coming to the mandatory documentation requirements under this clause. This subclause 6.2.2 specifies that the organization must retain documented information on the objectives and energy targets. Let me suggest you here to refer subclause 7.5 of the standard to get more information about the documented information. Now, let's discuss subclause 6.2.3 of ISO 50001-2018. This subclause 6.2.3 states that when planning how to achieve its objectives and energy targets, the organization must establish and maintain action plans, what will be done, what resources will be required, who will be responsible, when it will be completed, and how the results will be evaluated, including the methods used to verify energy performance improvement. To get more information about energy performance improvement, you are recommended to refer subclause 9.1 of the standard. Further, the subclause 6.2.3 states that the organization must consider how the actions could be integrated into the organization's business processes to achieve its objectives and energy targets. Coming to mandatory documentation requirements under this subclause, the subclause 6.2.3 clearly states that the organization must retain documented information on action plans. Lastly, the clause recommends referring subclause 7.5 for detailed information about documented information. Let me discuss now subclause 6.3 Energy Review. The subclause 6.3 Energy Review of ISO 50001-2018 specifies that the organization must develop and conduct an energy review. As per this clause, to develop the energy review, the organization must analyze energy use and consumption based on measurement and other data. That is, identifying current types of energy and evaluating past and current energy uses and consumption. It is recommended here in this clause to refer subclause 3.5.1 for more information about energy types. According to clause 6.3, organization must analyze energy and consumption based on the analysis identifying significant energy use SEUs. To get more information about the SEU, the standard suggests there in this subclause 6.3 to refer subclause 3.5.6 of the standard. The subclause 6.3 specifies that to develop the energy review, the organization of each SEU must determine relevant variables and current energy performance. For each SEU, the organization must identify the person or persons doing work under its control that influence or affect the SEUs while developing the energy review. Clause states that to develop the energy review, the organization must determine and prioritize opportunities for improving energy performance and must estimate future energy uses and energy consumption. Clause 6.3 of ISO 50001-2018 says that the energy review must be updated by organization at defined intervals. Apart from this, the energy review must be updated in response to major changes in facilities, equipment, systems, or energy using processes. Finally, the clause states that the organization must maintain the methods and criteria to develop the energy review as documented information. It is also stated under subclause 6.3 that organization must retain documented information of its results as well. Friends, it was about subclause 6.3 and now let us discuss about subclause 6.4 energy performance indicators. The subclause 6.4 states that the organization must determine energy performance indicators that are appropriate for measuring and monitoring its energy performance and also enable the organization to demonstrate energy performance improvement. The clause 6.4 specifies that the method for determining and updating the energy performance indicators must be maintained as documented information. The organization must consider that data which is indicating that relevant variables significantly affect energy performance to establish appropriate energy performance indicators. The subclause 6.4 states that the energy performance indicators values must be reviewed and compared to their respective energy baselines as appropriate. Further, covering the mandatory documentation requirements, the subclause 6.4 says that the organization must retain documented information of energy performance indicators values. It is also mentioned in this subclause to refer subclause 7.5 for more information about documented information. Let's talk about subclause 6.5 Energy Baseline now. The subclause 6.5 Energy Baseline of ISO 50001-2018 states that the organization must establish an energy baseline using the information from the energy reviews, taking into account a suitable period of time. For more information about energy review, the clause 6.5 here recommends to refer the subclause 6.3 of the standard. The subclause 6.5 specifies that where the organization has data indicating that relevant variables significantly affect energy performance, the organization must carry out normalization of the energy performance indicator values and corresponding energy baselines. Clause states as a note that depending on the nature of the activities, normalization can be a simple adjustment or a more complex procedure. As per subclause 6.5 of ISO 50001-2018, organization must revise the energy baselines in the case of energy performance indicators no longer reflect organization's energy performance. Organization must revise the energy baselines in case of any major changes to the static factors. Subclause 6.5 also states that organization must revise the energy baselines according to a predetermined method. Coming to the mandatory documentation requirements under this clause, the subclause 6.5 states that the organization must retain information of energy baselines, relevant variable data, and modifications to energy baselines as documented information. Now, let's discuss subclause 6.6 Planning for collection of energy data. According to the subclause 6.6 of ISO 50001-2018, the organization must ensure that key characteristics of its operation affecting energy performance are identified, measured, monitored, and analyzed at planned intervals. The organization must define and implement an energy data collection plan appropriate to its size, its complexity, its resources, and its measurement and monitoring equipment. As per subclause 6.6, the plan must specify the data necessary to monitor the key characteristics and state how and at what frequency the data shall be collected and retained. Clause 6.6 states that data to be collected or acquired by measurement as applicable and retained documented information must include the relevant variables for significant energy use or SEU in short. Second, energy consumption related to SEUs and to the organization. Third, operational criteria related to SEUs. Fourth, static factors if applicable. And fifth, the data specified in action plans. As per subclause 6.6, the energy data collection plan must be reviewed at defined intervals and updated as appropriate. Clause 6.6 further specifies that the organization must ensure that the equipment used for measurement of key characteristics provide data which are accurate and repeatable. The organization must retain documented information on measurement, monitoring, and other means of establishing accuracy and repeatability to meet the requirements of the standard. Friends, it was all about Clause 6, Planning of ISO 50001 2018. Now we shall talk about Clause 7, Support of ISO 50001 2018. The Clause 7, Support of ISO 50001 2018, is about the execution of the plans and processes that would enable an organization to successfully complete their energy management system responsibilities. This is a very powerful requirement covering all management system resource needs. Organization will need to determine necessary competence of personnel working under its control, affecting the performance of energy management system, its ability to fulfill its obligation, and ensure they receive the suitable training. In addition, organizations need to ensure that all people doing work under the organization's control are aware of the energy policy, how their work may impact the energy policy, and implication of not conforming to the energy management system. Clause 7 also specifies about the requirements for documented information which relate to the creation, updating, and control of specific data. Clause 7 of ISO 50001 2018 has further 5 subclauses, which are Subclause 7.1 Resources, Subclause 7.2 Competence, Subclause 7.3 Awareness, Subclause 7.4 Communication, and Subclause 7.5 Documented Information. Let's start with Subclause 7.1 Resources. The Subclause 7.1 Resources states that the organization must determine and provide the resources needed for the establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement of energy performance and the energy management system. As per the clause 7.1, the requirements are to check that organization has identified which resources it needs to make available in order to ensure the effective operation of the energy management system. Resources will often include raw materials, infrastructure, finance, personnel, and ICT, all of which can neither be externally all of which can be either internally or externally provided. Having sufficient resources is vital to ensure service conformity and satisfy customers' requirement. For example, having adequate workforces, finance, and equipment to ensure timely delivery of services. Many organizations run into energy management system nonconformities as a result of insufficient or improper use of resources. Organizations should identify the internal and external resources that are needed for the achievement of organization's objectives in the short and long term. The organization's policies and methods for resource management should be consistent with its strategy. The organization's policies and methods for resource management should be consistent with its strategy. As part of its strategic planning, top management must decide what resources it must develop, acquire, or outsource to be competitive. Due to ever changing dynamics of the business environment, these resources and competitive advantages must be constantly upgraded or altered to enable your organization to maintain its competitive advantage relative to other firms. To ensure that resources such as equipment, infrastructure facilities, materials, knowledge, finance, and workers are used effectively and efficiently, it is necessary to have energy management system processes in place to provide, allocate, monitor, evaluate, optimize, maintain, and protect those resources. Auditors may look at the budget to check that some funding has been allocated to the energy management system, but they might dig deeper checking if the organization has really identified all types of resources required and that it has taken actions to ensure that those resources are available as needed. Coming to subclause 7.2 competence. What does this clause states? The subclause 7.2 competence states that the organization must determine the necessary competence of person or persons doing work under its control that affects its energy performance and energy management system. As per this subclause, organization must ensure that these persons are competent on the basis of appropriate education, training, skills, or experience. According to this subclause, organization must take actions to acquire the necessary competence and evaluate the effectiveness of the actions taken wherever applicable. Clause also specifies that the organization must retain appropriate documented information as evidence of competence. Subclause 7.2 also says under a note that applicable actions can include, for example, the provision of training to, the mentoring of, or the reassignment of currently employed persons, or the hiring or contracting of competent persons. Let me explain this subclause 7.2 in general. Competence describes the guidelines that must be followed by all staff members in order to be considered competent of the requirements. This procedure ensures that all employees are performing to their best ability in their particular segment of expertise. The purpose of the competence procedure is to define process of organization for undertaking the necessary actions and responsibilities for ensuring that the competencies required meeting customer and other external or internal requirements. This competence procedure also defines the responsibilities for planning, reporting, and retaining associated records. Organizations should establish a practice for evaluating existing staff competencies against changing business needs and prevailing trends. Organizations should check for evidence that all staff members who work under organization's control are competent and that evidence continuing competence is maintained as documented information in accordance to clause 7.5 of the standard. Organization can define the competency requirements by actively identifying training requirements and delivering the training actively. Competency requirements can be defined by actively monitoring the effectiveness of the training given to staff members. Training should never be performed as a thoughtless reaction with no actual objectives, but instead, it should be advanced toward permitting each employee with the skills and knowledge they need to move the organization forward and improve customer contentment. As per clause 7.2 requirements, organizations should train the staff to improve their skills and overall performance. Comparing existing performance to post training performance is a simple way of evaluating the efficiency of training. Organization can consider making provision for the following questions related to audit. What type of training is given to new employees? How the training has been evaluated? What steps are taken by the organization when training is considered unproductive? What type of training records are maintained by the organization? So friends, practicing all this information, organization can determine and provide the necessary competence of working persons under its control, affecting its energy management performance to achieve the organization's objectives. Let's talk about subclause 7.3 awareness of the standard. The subclause 7.3 awareness states that the person doing work under the organization's control must be aware of the energy policy and their contribution to the effectiveness of the energy management system, including achievement of objectives and energy targets and the benefits of improved energy performance. The clause specifies that person working under the control of organization must be aware with the impact of their activities or behavior with respect to energy performance. Subclause 7.3 awareness also specifies that people working under organization's control must be aware with the implications of not conforming to the energy management system requirements. Let me explain this subclause 7.3 awareness in detail. Clause 7.3 specifies that the organizations require to make workers under its control aware of the organization's energy policy, energy management objectives, their own specific contribution, as well as prominently the consequences of not conforming to the requirements. Organizations should review their communication, awareness activities, and plans to ensure all affected personnel are included and address any breaches. Subject to the size and values of the organization, a wide range of approaches can be engaged for awareness of the energy policy and objectives. From regular meetings, sessions, talks, notices, leaflets, and publication of energy metrics to the inclusion and participation of individuals in cross functional teams and improvement initiatives. Job description, training records, work instructions, and minutes of performance review meetings are some examples not only of ways in which staff can be made aware of their specific contributions and implication of non-conformance, but also as documented evidence of such. Let's discuss about awareness training. Organizations do not need to conduct long theory sessions. Organizations do not need to conduct long theory sessions for awareness training. Training techniques can involve short training programs accompanied with tutorial videos and hands-on demonstration that address key elements of the energy management system. Communication via circulars, electronic bulletin boards, posters, and informational meetings are other procedures to promote and strengthen the energy management awareness training. The requirement for general awareness training apply to all employees, including those whose work may cause significant impacts or energy management risks. Awareness training is intended to provide an overview of the organization's energy policy, objectives, and targets, and overall energy management system. Organization must establish and maintain procedures to make its employees and members at each relevant function and level aware of the importance of conformance with the policy and the energy management system procedures and requirements. It should also include the actual and potential significant impacts and risk of the activities, products, or services. Awareness procedure should make employees aware with the benefits of improved personal performance and the employee's roles and responsibilities in achieving conformance with policies and procedures. Organization must establish and maintain procedures to make its employees aware with their roles and responsibilities towards emergency awareness and response and potential consequences of departure from specified operating procedures. Now, let me discuss about the awareness training materials. Organization may also include additional elements in awareness training that address the organization's objectives and targets, the employees' actions to minimize or eliminate impacts and risks, and how they can contribute and how they can contribute, the importance of compliance with operational and regulatory requirements, the overall improvement of the energy management system performance, and the potential financial return, the importance to interested parties. General awareness training should be commenced in accordance with task demands. Awareness training is not skills acquisition, but rather broad-based training provided to increase employee awareness of particular energy management issues. Friends, it was about subclause 7.3 awareness. of ISO 50001-2018. Now, let me discuss about Subclass 7.4, Communication of the Standard. The Subclass 7.4 Communication of ISO 50001-2018 states that the organization must determine the internal and external communications relevant to the energy management system, including on what it will communicate, when to communicate, with whom to communicate, and how to communicate, and also who communicates. Clause says that when establishing its communication processes, the organization must ensure that information being communicated is consistent with information generated within the energy management system and is dependable as well. According to this clause 7.4, the organization must establish and implement a process by which any person or persons doing work under the organization's control can make comments or suggest improvements to the energy management system and to energy performance. Lastly, this subclause also specifies that the organization must consider retaining documented information of the suggested improvements. Now, let me explain this subclause 7.4 in detail using some examples. While establishing its communication processes, the organization must take into account its compliance obligations and ensure that the energy information communicated is stable with information generated within the energy management system and is consistent. The organization must respond to relevant communications on its energy management system as appropriate. The organization must retain documented information as evidence of its communications. Clause 7.4 Communication refers to both types of communications, that is, internal and external communications to the organization. It requires organization to establish and maintain a process for internal communications between the various levels and functions of the organization. It also requires organization to document and respond to relevant communications from external interested parties. One of the examples of internal communications include communicating energy objectives to staff. Other example of internal communication is communicating the energy policy and raising awareness of energy management issues to the staff. Another example of internal communication could be advising of non-conformance to relevant divisional heads. Let's talk about examples of external communications now. External examples include dealing with energy management system complaints or replying to media inquiries, especially in the happening of an occurrence. A failure to communicate effectively within initial few hours of an incident could seriously fall the company's ability to control the situation. This will challenge the company's reputation amongst staff, customers, media, or the general public. Effective internal communication requires mechanisms for information to flow top down and bottom up. Employees are often an outstanding source of information, issues, and ideas. Communicating with external parties is also significant for effective energy management system. Information from external sources can be critical in setting energy management system and other business goals. The clause 7.4 communication requires the organization to have in place a system of communication that ensures that those within the organization are kept informed regarding the energy management system and energy management issues associated with the organization's operations, and the communication from external interested parties is received and handled according to the established process. Communication of the energy policy will also form an important part of internal communication, as a key part of the communication program will involve making sure employees understand the energy policy. In order to develop effective processes for internal and external communication, it is useful to have clear understanding of what is encompassed by the terms internal communication and external communication and what the ultimate goal is of such processes. The key to achieving the goals of internal communication in a energy management system is to develop a two-way communication pathway, communication from top management and communication from line workers who are most familiar with the energy management issues at the organization. Top management must act to support energy policies and procedures and the overall energy management system. External communication generally refers to any communication between an organization and external interested parties regarding management issues at the organization. Interested parties could include regulators, customers, suppliers, and vendors, etc. It is intended to ensure that inquiries from external interested parties are addressed in a systematic manner. To successfully implement a closer working relationship between the energy management manager and the communications or public relations department will be required to ensure that a response is given that is technically correct and properly communicated. The key to creating an effective communication program is to involve as many employees as possible in the energy management system process. This will require initial and continued outreach by top management, but will often result in substantial rewards through innovative and cost saving procedures forwarded by employees. Reward and other appreciation programs can play an important role in evolving an interest for this program. Friends, it was an explanation of Subclass 7.4 Communication of ISO 50001 2018. Now, let's talk about Subclass 7.5, which is Documented Information. Documented information is a term which is intended to describe any information that is needed to be controlled and maintained by the organization and the medium on which it is contained. In brief, it includes anything that organization requires to be recorded to make sure its energy management system functions properly and that organization can demonstrate concerns of the case. The requirements for documented information are captured and are kept impartially basic. In simple words, a document is information that is written or recorded on some medium such as paper sheet or computer's storage devices. A document may specify requirements, for example, inventory or technical specification of a product and may provide direction or show results or evidence of activities performed. The term documented information is used for all document requirements under ISO 50001 2018. The need to have additional documentation beyond those specified in this standard may depend upon compliance obligations, including regulatory requirements and own organizational requirements. Other factors to consider may include the complexity of the services and processes, type of activities, energy management issues, significant energy aspects, economic risk, effectiveness, and the competence of staff. This information is expected to be personalized to organization because it is noted that the extent of the documented information can differ due to the size and complexity of the organization and also the competence of the people. The organization is responsible for determining what documented information needs to be retained, the period of time for which it is to be retained, and the media to be used for its retention. The requirement to maintain documented information may also include the possibility that the organization can retain that same documented information for a particular purpose. For example, to retain previous versions of it. Lastly, there are requirements for the control of documented information, particularly how it is available and suitable for use, how it is adequately protected, how it is distributed applicably, and how access, retrieval, use, storage, and preservation are controlled. Finally, there needs to be a control of changes, retention of documented information, and disposition where these documents are removed from use. If you look closely, you will see that these requirements are very much the same as those already in place for documented procedures and records, only merged into one set of requirements. The requirements of the clause 7.5 of ISO 50001-2018 standard are there to give organization a framework to build an energy management system that works the best for the organization in effort to meet legal requirements and improve energy management performance. The subclause 7.5 has its three subclauses, which are subclause 7.5.1 General, subclause 7.5.2 Creating and Updating, and subclause 7.5.3 Control of Documented Information. Let me start with the requirements of subclause 7.5.1 General. The subclause 7.5.1 General states that the organization's energy management system must include documented information required by this document and the documented information determined by the organization as being necessary for the effectiveness of the energy management system and to demonstrate energy performance improvement. The subclause 7.5.1 states, as a note, that the extent of documented information for an energy management system can differ from one organization to another due to the size of organization and its type of activities, processes, products, and services. It could be differed due to the complexity of processes and their interactions and the competence of persons. Let's talk about the requirements of subclause 7.5.2 Creating and Updating. The subclause 7.5.2 of ISO 50001-2018 specifies that when creating and updating documented information, the organization must ensure appropriate identification and description. For example, a title, date, author, or reference number, etc. Clause states that the organization must ensure appropriate format and media of the documented information. Examples of format are language, version, graphics, video, etc. And the example of media are paper or electronic. Subclause 7.5.2 also states that the organization must review and approve of documented information for suitability and adequacy. Now, coming to the subclause 7.5.3 Control of Documented Information. The subclause 7.5.3 of ISO 50001-2018 states that the documented information required by the energy management system and by this document must be controlled to ensure that it is available and suitable for use, where and when it is needed. As per this subclause, the documented information required by the energy management system must be adequately protected. For example, from loss of confidentiality, improper use, and loss of integrity. The subclause 7.5.3 specifies that for the control of documented information, as applicable, the organization must address the activities like distribution, access, retrieval, and use, storage and preservation, including preservation of legibility, control of changes, example, version control, retention, and disposition. This subclause says that the documented information of external origin determined by the organization to be necessary for the planning and operation of the energy management system must be identified as appropriate and controlled. Lastly, subclause 7.5.3 states as a note that access can imply a decision regarding the permission to view the documented information only, or the permission and authority to view and change the documented information. We have completed the clause 7.5 Documented Information of ISO 50001-2018. Now, Let's start the next clause 8, Operation of ISO 50001-2018. The clause 8 of ISO 50001-2018 outlines the requirements energy management system must meet for successful certification. It includes operational planning and control and ensures that these requirements are consistent with reinforcing continual improvement. The clause 8 has further three subclauses, which are Subclause 8.1 Operational Planning and Control, Subclause 8.2 Design, and Subclause 8.3 Procurement. Let me start with Subclause 8.1 Operational Planning and Control. The Subclause 8.1 of ISO 50001-2018 specifies that the organization must plan, implement, and control the processes related to its significant energy use needed to meet requirements and to implement the actions determined in Subclause 6.2. This could be done by establishing criteria for the processes, including the effective operation and maintenance of facilities, equipment, systems, and energy using processes, where their absence can lead to a significant deviation from intended energy performance. Clause specifies that organization should determine the significant deviation criteria. The subclause 8.1 of ISO 50001-2018 specifies that the organization must plan, implement, and control the processes related to its significant energy use by communicating the criteria to relevant person or persons doing work under the control of the organization. According to this subclause 8.1, organization must plan, implement, and control the processes by implementing control of the processes in accordance with the criteria, including operating and maintaining facilities, equipment, systems, and energy using processes in accordance with established criteria. Clause also states that organization must plan, implement, and control the processes related to its significant energy use by keeping documented information to the extent necessary to have confidence that the processes must be carried out as planned. The organization must also control planned changes and review the consequences of unintended changes, taking actions to mitigate any adverse effects as necessary. It is also stated under the subclause 8.1 of ISO 50001-2018 that the organization must ensure that outsourced significant energy use or processes related to its SEUs are controlled. Coming to the subclause 8.2 design now. The subclause 8.2 design of ISO 50001-2018 specifies that the organization must consider energy performance improvement opportunities and operational control. It must be considered by the organization in the design of new, modified, and renovated facilities, equipment, systems, and energy using processes that can have a significant impact on its energy performance. This could be done by organization over the planned or expected operating lifetime. Further, the subclause states that where applicable, the results of the energy performance consideration must be incorporated into specification, design, and procurement activities. Covering the mandatory documentation requirements, the subclause 8.2 design says that the organization must retain documented information of the design activities related to energy performance to meet the requirements of the standard. Let's talk about the last subclause 8.3 Procurement. This subclause 8.3 Procurement of ISO 50001-2018 states that the organization must establish and implement criteria for evaluating energy performance over the planned or expected operating lifetime. The criteria must be established and implemented when procuring energy using products, equipment, and services which are expected to have a significant impact on the organization's energy performance. Subclause says that when procuring energy using products, equipment, and services that have or can have an impact on significant energy use, the organization must inform suppliers that energy performance is one of the evaluation criteria for procurement. According to this subclause 8.3, where applicable, the organization must define and communicate specifications for ensuring the energy performance of procured equipment and services and the purchase of energy. We have covered Clause 8, Operation of ISO 50001 2018. Let's discuss Clause 9, Performance Evaluation now. This clause is all about measuring and evaluating your energy performance and energy management system to ensure that it's effective and helps you to continually improve. You will need to consider what should be measured, the methods employed, and when data should be analyzed and reported on. An energy data collection plan is also required. See Section 6.6. As a general recommendation, organizations should determine what information they need to evaluate energy performance and management system effectiveness. Internal audits will need to be carried out, and there are certain audit criteria that are defined to ensure that the results of these audits are reported to relevant management. Finally, management reviews will need to be carried out, and documented information of these reviews must be kept as evidence. The clause 9 has been divided into three subclauses, and those subclauses are Subclause 9.1, Monitoring, Measurement, Analysis and Evaluation of Energy Performance and the Energy Management System. Subclause 9.2, Internal Audit, and Subclause 9.3, Management Review. Let me discuss Subclause 9.1, Monitoring, Measurement, Analysis and Evaluation of Energy Performance and the Energy Management System. The subclause 9.1.1 General states that for energy performance and the energy management system, the organization must determine what needs to be monitored and measured, including at a minimum the key characteristics like the effectiveness of the action plan in achieving objectives and energy targets, energy performance indicators, operation of significant energy use, and the actual versus expected energy consumption. According to this subclause 9.1.1, organization must determine the methods for monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation as applicable to ensure valid results. The clause 9.1.1 says that for energy performance and the energy management system, the organization must determine when the monitoring and measurement should be performed and when the results from monitoring and measurement should be analyzed and evaluated. Subclause states that the organization must evaluate its energy performance and the effectiveness of the energy management system. The clause also says that improvement in energy performance should be evaluated by comparing energy performance indicator values against the corresponding energy baselines. The standard ISO 50001 2018 through its subclause 9.1.1 also specifies that the organization must investigate and respond to significant deviations in energy performance. Covering the mandatory documentation requirements, the subclause 9.1.1 states that the organization must retain documented information on the results of the investigation and response. And also, the organization must retain appropriate documented information on the results from monitoring and measurement. Now, coming to the subclause 9.1.2, evaluation of compliance with legal requirement and other requirements. This subclause 9.1.2 simply states that the organization shall evaluate compliance with legal and other requirements related to its energy efficiency, energy use, energy consumption, and the energy management system at planned intervals. The clause also talks about the mandatory documentation requirements under the standard. It says that the organization must retain documented information on the results of the evaluation of compliance and any actions taken. Now, let's talk about subclause 9.2, which is internal audit. The clause 9.2.1 specifies that the organization must conduct internal audits of the energy management system at planned intervals to provide information ensuring that the energy management system improves energy performance and conforms to the organization's own requirements for its energy management system. Internal audit conducted at planned intervals must be conform to the energy policy, objectives, and energy targets established by the organization. The subclause 9.2.1 states that the internal audit must be conformed to the requirements of this standard and is also effectively implemented and maintained. Now, let's discuss subclause 9.2.2. The subclause 9.2.2 of the standard states that the organization must plan, establish, implement, and maintain audit programs, including the frequency, methods, responsibilities, planning requirements, and reporting. According to the subclause, audit programs should take the importance of the processes concerned and the results of previous audits into consideration. Subclause says that audit programs must define the audit criteria and scope for each audit. Organization must select auditors and conduct audits to ensure objectivity and the impartiality of the audit process, and also to ensure that the results of the audits are reported to relevant management. Subclause 9.2.2 specifies that the organization should take appropriate action in accordance with subclause 10.1 and 10.2 of the standard. Lastly, this subclause of ISO 50001-2018 states that the organization must retain documented information as evidence of the implementation of the audit programs and the audit results. Coming to the next subclause now, that is subclause 9.3, Management Review. The standard, through its subclause 9.3.1, states that the top management must review the organization's energy management system at planned intervals, ensuring its continuing suitability, adequacy, effectiveness, and alignment with the strategic direction of the organization. Let's discuss subclause 9.3.2. The subclause 9.3.2 states that the management review must comprise the information on the energy management system performance, including trends in nonconformities and corrective actions, monitoring and measurement results, audit results, and result of the evaluation of compliance with legal requirements and other requirements. Clause also specifies that the management review must contain the opportunities for continual improvement, including those for competence. Further, the energy policy must also be included into management review as per this subclause 9.3.2 of the ISO 50001-2018. Let's talk about subclause 9.3.3 of ISO 50001-2018. The subclause 9.3.3 states that the energy performance inputs to management review must include the extent to which objectives and energy targets have been met, and the energy performance and energy performance improvement based on monitoring and measurement results, including the energy performance indicators. As per this subclause, input to the management review must comprise the status of the action plans. Coming to subclause 9.3.4 now. This subclause 9.3.4 specifies that the output of the management review must include decisions related to continual improvement opportunities and any need for changes to the energy management system, including point 1, opportunities to improve energy performance. Point 2, the energy policy. Point 3, the energy performance indicators or energy baselines. Point 4, objectives, energy targets, action plans, or other elements of the energy management system and actions to be taken if they are not achieved. Point 5. Opportunities to improve integration with business processes. Point 6. The allocation of resources. Point 7. The improvement of competence, awareness, and communication. Lastly, Subclause 9.3.4 states that the organization must retain documented information as evidence of the results of management reviews to meet the requirement of the standard ISO 50001-2018. Friends, we have completed the clause 9, Performance Evaluation of ISO 50001-2018, Energy Management System. Now we shall discuss about last clause, which is clause 10, Improvement. The clause 10 covers issues that need to be addressed such as non-conformities, corrective action, and continual improvement to enhance performance going forward. This clause has two subclauses, which are subclause 10.1, non-conformity and corrective action, and subclause 10.2, continual improvement. We shall begin with subclause 10.1, non-conformity and corrective action. This subclause 10.1 of ISO 50001-2018 states that when nonconformity is identified, the organization must react to the nonconformity and, as applicable, to take action to control and correct it, and to deal with the consequences. As per clause 10.1, organization must evaluate the need for action to eliminate the causes of the nonconformity, in order that it does not recur or occur elsewhere, by reviewing the nonconformity, determining the causes of the nonconformity, and determining if similar nonconformities exist or can potentially occur. The clause 10.1 specifies that organization must implement any action needed and review the effectiveness of any corrective action. The clause 10.1 specifies that organization must implement any action needed and review the effectiveness of any corrective action taken. This subclause 10.1 also specifies that organization must make changes to the energy management system if necessary to meet the requirements of the standard. As per this subclause 10.1, the organization must ensure that corrective actions taken should be appropriate to the effects of the encountered nonconformities. Lastly, the subclause 10.1 states under mandatory documentation requirement that the organization must retain documented information of the nature of the nonconformities and subsequent actions taken, and the results of any corrective action. Coming to subclause 10.2, Continual Improvement. The subclause 10.2, Continual Improvement of ISO 50001-2018 states that the organization must continually improve the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the energy management system. The organization must demonstrate continual energy performance improvement. Let me summarize this clause 10.2 in general now. Clause 10.2, Continual Improvement of ISO 50001-2018 specifies that an organization maintains its energy management system regularly to ensure that it is appropriate for purpose, adequately comprehensive, and effective. Continual improvement is a crucial aspect of the energy management system in the effort to achieve and maintain suitability, competence, and effectiveness of the energy management system as it relates to the objectives of the organization. Organizations with operational energy management system must regularly attempt to improve their management system. It is difficult for organizations nor their context to remain static. Moreover, the risks to energy management systems as well as the methods of misusing them are rapidly evolving. Eventually, there is no energy management system that can remain perfect. It must act at a constant pace of improvement. However, An organization's context and internal dynamics remain the same. Continual improvement is just not a requirement of an energy management system, but it is a need of every organization. To illustrate nonconformity or risk related improvements, an analysis of energy management system components based on the competence, suitability, and effectiveness criteria may show that the component exists may show that the component exceeds energy management system requirements or is incompetent. Changing the management system can often improve the energy management system of the organization. Here a question comes: where from to get the improvements? Improvements can come from a number of sources like internal and external audits, output from management reviews, incidents, and suggestions, including those from interested parties, etc. The organization may select those improvements it feels can add value to the energy management system. Suggestions from internal and external auditors also do not need to be implemented but should be considered. Organization can set the timeframes for implementing agreed improvements. Now, let me talk about some tips for organizations to achieve improvement. Tip number 1: to improve, organizations should conduct internal and external audits regularly and should also conduct regular and appropriate management reviews. Tip number 2: organizations should implement suggestions from interested parties into the energy management system according to their perceptions. Tip number 3: organizations should maintain a record regarding whether the organization is following regulatory policies or not. Tip number 4: organizations should be reconsidering energy management system controls. Tip number 5: organizations should match organizational activities to the requirements of ISO 50001 standard. Friends, these were some of the tips for an organization to achieve improvement. Now, to discuss further the clause 10.2, the top management can also set objectives for continuous improvement, such as measuring effectiveness, cost, or process maturity. Energy management system is considered as an important component of business operations. To stay current with developments, organizations should periodically review energy management system to ensure that it functions and is effective, and also is consistent with the organization's objectives. The assessment can also include an overview of the efficiency of the management system and the components of its resources, evaluating whether their usage of resources is appropriate, if there is a possibility of productivity loss or opportunity to achieve greater effectiveness. Area of improvement can also be identified while managing non-conformities with corrective actions. Once areas of improvement are identified, the organization should be consistent in maintaining them by evaluating them to determine whether or not they are worth pursuing. Organizations should also be consistent in maintaining them by planning and implementing the actions to deal with the opportunities, confirming that benefits are realized and nonconformities do not occur, or should plan for corrective actions for nonconformities. Lastly, the organization should be consistent in maintaining areas of improvement by evaluating the effectiveness of the actions. Friends, we have finished all the clauses of ISO 50001 2018 Energy Management System. The standard ISO 50001 2018 also provides a correspondence between ISO 50001 2011 and ISO 50001 2018 under Annexure B and a bibliography for more detailed information about various fundamentals, techniques, and requirements, etc. You can see here on the screen the correspondence between ISO 50001 2011 and ISO 50001 2018 and bibliography at the end of the session and could explore more about the standard. So friends, now we have reached at the end of this session. I hope that you have an idea about ISO 50001-2018 Energy Management System. For more information about our institute and other training programs, you can contact us through email or phone. I sincerely thank you all for your interest and attention. Thanks and best wishes.